Hey guys, this is your girl Lira, and you're listening to Self Reflection Podcast. Thank you guys for joining me on another episode of Self Reflection Podcast. I pray and I hope that this podcast episode finds you guys in the best possible state that you guys could be in today. And if you're not doing your best, I want to remind you to please create some time to do some self reflection. Also, if you cannot handle the emotions that you're feeling in this moment all by yourself, please go out and reach out for some support. Sometimes we need people, right? Because we can't do this life thing by ourselves. So please reach out. Today we are going to be talking to Robert Conquerors Roberts, and Robert is an author. Robert is an award-winning personal developer. Robert is a speaker, a life coach, a personal trainer, and everything else. Worked in the law enforcement as well. So actually, I think I'm not doing Robert justice right now. So guys, let's just pause and bring Robert in. Hello, hi.
Hello, hi. Nice to be
How
here.
are
I
you?
am doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, thank you for being here. Let me start this over. Please, Robert, reintroduce yourself or tell us a little bit about who you are because I don't think I did you justice in that
Oh,
intro.
no, you were fine. You're fine. My name is Robert Conqueror Roberts, and I am a life coach and an author.
Okay. And I was like, ooh, I was waiting for more. I was waiting for more. I was waiting for more. Okay, because I think I know a little bit more than our family here on, self-reflection podcast.
Yes.
Um, but I do want to start with where did you grow up, Robert, and as a young boy, and how was that for you?
Yes. Well, I grew up in a small town in upstate New York, and we were the only people of any color in our environment, in our community. So I faced a lot of adversity growing up. I had a chance to see firsthand the very worst in people, and later on, the firsthand the very best in people. So it gave me a really well-rounded view of the world. It quickly allows you to actually find out who you actually are when you go through that adversity. And almost like sand, through intense pressure, sand can become a beautiful glass vase, but you have to be able to go through that process correctly, or else it can actually destroy you if you don't put things together in a better perspective.
Yes. So, and from that place, because I'm trying to build up, I think I'm trying to build up a story here. I don't know how I'm going about this, but um, from that place, growing up in a town that, barely any other colored people were there and going through the adversity that you went through, what made you take the path in life and going into becoming, one of the uh I want to say I don't want to say tough, but one of the most recognized people in the law enforcement industry, I would say.
Yes. So I never liked bullies. And growing up, I used to see, my neighbors would actually break our mailbox down in the middle of the evening with baseball bats and they would urinate on it and put it on fire. And I would see signs in my yard that say, go back to Africa. Our neighbors actually took the irrigation system from their yard and they would put tubes and pipes facing towards our yard growing up, which would actually flood our yard during the rain. So whenever it rained, we at least had 2 to 3 feet of water. Our basement was filled 6 feet high, full of water growing up. And, just kind of seeing this on a day to day basis, going to school, having to be put in a corner, told that I wasn't good enough, that I was from Africa, and that I didn't belong in their country. I just found that to be very strange, especially when you're 5 years old and you don't understand why you can't go to playtime because they said you skip too high and you make other children feel uncomfortable. They felt uncomfortable. So when I left from the all white area, I went to an area that was predominantly black and Puerto Rican. It had a nice little mix. And I said, finally, I'm here. I finally made it. And then I realized from some people who look like me, they said, I sound like I'm a white guy. And
Mm.
now I was called the N word just as much. And now I had to fight just as much. So, on an average, I had to fight 3 to 4 days a week, every week for several years, from kindergarten all the way up to high school. So, when you think about that, I got really good at fighting. That's all I can say. But the one thing I did learn was that, people are people, no matter what shade, no matter what color, no matter what size, and it's all about the mindset.
Yeah.
Later on, I worked in the prison system. Started off as a counselor in 1998. I worked in the prison system. I worked in the corporate world for major companies. I played college football in college, Dean's List, all those good things. I was a little bit of an overachiever, you could say, but I was just wanted to do my best to represent who I am. And later on, while working in law enforcement, I realized getting all these awards and plaques on the wall, trophies from local, state, county, fed, what did that mean at the end of the day? All these trophies on the wall, all these awards. Instead of me chasing after the physical monsters, I wanted to chase from the monsters here, the monsters that were causing people to kill, to rape, to maim. That's one of the things that I wanted to do as far as to make a real difference. So it wasn't about the physical monsters anymore. After conducting hundreds of interviews with some of the world's worst killers and terrorists and violators, like say for instance, I saw a man who would harm children for fun, and I asked him, "Why do you do this?" And he told me. He said, "When I was younger, I went to a sleepover, and the mother's husband or the mother's brother was there, and he did this to me. So now I have to show my power, and now I have to inflict this type of pain on other people." And that right there really intrigued me to the point that story after story, even when I worked in the prison system, I would wonder why psychologists and therapists would get stabbed and sexually assaulted all the time by inmates, and I never did, by the inmates. And they told me, they said, they talk at us, but you talk with us and to us. And there's a difference. This is the reason why I love what I do. And I had to open up my company. So even though I won, I was awarded by some really good supervisors, Federal Officer of the Year award for my unit.
Yeah.
I knew that my purpose was to do more. There's a difference between doing your job and doing your work.
Yeah.
And this is what I try to tell us all. There's a big difference between doing your job and then that burning desire inside of you that says, I'm supposed to do something different. This is the reason why a lot of people find themselves running late for work, because they know that this is not where they're supposed to be. There's something inside them that says, well, I knew I was leaving on time, but why did I have to go to the bathroom at the last minute? Why did I forget this? Why? And then you find yourself rushing because you're trying to give yourself that adrenaline rush just to walk into the door, because you know that this position is not your work. It's just your job. So I can go on for days on that. I don't want to talk your ear off on that, but we all go through something. The question is what are you going to do about that situation? Are you going to make a difference, or are you going to sit there and are you going to complain about it and just sit on your thumbs hoping someone else will make that change?
Absolutely. I love that, and we're going to hop into, the Conqueror's Mindset, your book right now. What drove you to writing this book, and why did you choose that title?
Yes. Well, I try to tell people, as far as emotions, you're going to feel happy, sad, nervous. These are things that happen to people. But one of the most powerful emotions is anger.
Mm.
I found that when something makes you angry, something makes you upset, that is where your purpose lies. When it's something that you know that you should do no matter what. I don't care if your family says, I shouldn't do this. This is why I say don't share big dreams with small-minded people, because people don't understand your purpose. When I sat there, and of course I got my degree by now, and I was so happy to have all these awards on the wall. And when I sat there and I followed psychologists and therapists around from the country, all over the country, and they were teaching me different things and methods. And I was a counselor, and I was a behavioral specialist, and I was in treatment teams with different groups of people. And I would see the same thing being said to every person. They would say the same jargon, the same lines. Does that make sense? And they would nod their head up and down like this. Does that make sense? If that makes sense, thank you for sharing that with me. Tell me more. How did that make you feel? All of these types of, say, catchwords.
Yes.
I didn't like it. I looked on their piece of paper and I seen that they were actually making a grocery list. They're writing down a grocery list of what they wanted at their home, but they weren't listening to the client. So a lot of people don't understand that anxiety itself is just a symptom of another problem. Most of the time, in most cases, it's fear of something that's about to occur. It's fear of something that we believe is about to occur. So when I see someone being offered a pill because they have anxiety, or someone comes in and they're afraid of cats and they're offered a pill or some medication, that really bothered me. Mm-hmm. It bothered me that when someone touches their chin, the psychologist told me to touch my chin. When someone folded their arms, the psychologist told me to do this. It's called mirroring. It's just to mirror the behavior to allow you now to feel comfortable as if I'm listening. So I told him, why pretend as if I'm listening? Why don't I really listen? Why pretend as if I'm going to help? Why don't I really help? And that's why I became a coach, almost like Michael Jordan. He had Dean Smith in college, and he was a really, really good coach. But then he had Phil Jackson in the pros. And what happens is that no matter how good you are, we need someone to help sharpen our sword. Okay. Only through the pressure and only through the friction can we become sharp. And I try to tell people so many times we wander through the wilderness with a dull axe trying to chop down trees, only to find that our hands are full of blisters. When in reality, if we just took the time to sharpen our own blade, then we would chop through life a lot smoother with less time and less effort with no injury.
Mm. Oh wow. I think I was like somewhat mesmerized in like the psychology behind what you were saying, and also the motivational words that were coming from that same, same lines that you were talking about right now. When it comes out, because I how do we like overcome fear? Because I think fear is one of those things that you talked a lot in the book. Actually, before we get into that, I want to ask you, is the story in the book a true story?
Yes, it is.
Oh
And
my goodness.
unfortunately, the gentlemen who were in the story with me, I wanted to put their names. You saw my like my reference list of people that I was just giving credit for. But because of the situation was so in depth and so heavy to them, they were like, Rob, we helped you with some of the information there, but we just don't want our names in the book because of what happened. And unfortunately, and I know someone has to read the story to find out, but it gets a little rough sometimes when you face the monster in your life. And a lot of people are not willing to go through that fight. We hear doctors all the time say, oh, fear, it's like a child in the backseat of your car. And, sometimes you just, you got to listen to it, but you just got to let it go. And you just got to take a deep breath and then you just meditate. That doesn't work. That's nonsense. Those are called coping mechanisms. What
Yes.
I do is I teach conquering mechanisms. There's no fidget involved. There's no, oh, just breathe and think happy thoughts. It doesn't work like that. Whatever the fear is in our life, we have to put our foot in the ground, turn around and face it head on and fight it and win. That's the only way that you could beat a monster in your life. The fear of anxiety, stress, childhood trauma, self doubt, worry. You can't tap dance on thin ice and just hope that it'll go away because it won't. The monster grows stronger. It goes a lot stronger. So we have to face it once and for all. And by doing that, we'll develop knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, which will then allow us to defeat that fear.
Yes. So okay, so what, because when I was reading the book or I was listening to the book, I was like, there's no way this story is real. How did, like, with the weapon and the fissies, and I was just like, oh like what, and it kind of drove me to like what gets in this people's mind, or what get into a person's mind to be able to even think in such way, right? And okay, so let's get into fear. If you haven't read the book,
That's a
guys,
good point you just made
yeah,
too.
go ahead and read the book. Go ahead and read the book. But guys, like I was saying, if you have yet to read the book, go read the book. It's called The Conqueror Mindset by Robert Conqueror Roberts. We're also going to tag the link in this conversation, right, when we put it out.
Just like
But
the cover of the book in back of me, you have 10 men and 10 women from different parts of the world. It just shows us that we're all facing the same monster. It just has different tentacles and it reveals itself in different ways to us, whether it be stress, fear, anxiety, childhood trauma. And of course, without giving away the entire book, just like the monster in the book, we all have a story.
yes,
So the monster may or may not have always been like that. And sometimes people turn into something that they don't want to turn into. You ever have that person who just makes you so angry that you end up being so demonstrative in that moment and you're yelling and screaming, and then you say to yourself, I'm not like this.
yeah,
They pulled something out of me that I'm not familiar with. And then what happens is we have to learn how to choose distance over disrespect and peace over drama. And a lot of times we're not brave enough to do that in our own life because of how it may look or what they might think of you. Well, here's the thing. They're going to think of you any way they want to anyway. We can't change their opinion of us. So we might as well just live our best life and be comfortable in our own skin. And the only way to do that is to set healthy boundaries. And those boundaries start within. We have to say, you know what? I know my value and I know my worth, and I'm not going to answer this text message. I'm not going to pick up and answer this phone. This email, I'm not going to respond to that because I'm not going to let that negativity come into my life. You know?
absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you 100%, and thank you for sharing those powerful words. I think those also spoke to me in this moment as well. And let's talk about fear. When it comes down to fear, how do we overcome that emotion that a lot of us are also afraid of it, right? We're afraid of fear, but also we're afraid of fear. So how do we overcome that, or even start to face that type of energy?
Yes. So I heard an old saying that the only thing to fear is fear itself or something. As I respect the person who made that up, that actually makes no sense whatsoever. The only
Hmm.
thing of fear is fear itself. That means you're okay. So I mean, well, Unfortunately, a lot of us are not good listeners. So when we hear that, it sounds so catchy. We're, oh, wow, that is great. No, it's not great. Okay. We don't fear fear. We have to understand that fear is something that is real, but only to the person who believes in it. Therefore, fear is not real.
Mhm.
Here's an example. I know a woman who's very sweet, but she's afraid of puppies. Now, I don't know if you're afraid of puppies, but most people are not afraid of puppies, but she's terrified of puppies. She can see a lion at the zoo and she wants to go up and go pet it, but something about a puppy. So instead of giving her a pill or saying that something's wrong with her, no, let's go speak to her and say, hey, what traumatic experience did you have with a puppy? Come to find out, when she was younger, she went to go visit a friend who had they had a litter of puppies, and the puppies just trampled her when she was younger. She could barely breathe. They were licking her, but they were kind of nipping her at the same time. But that fear stayed with her. So in her mind, she's that 2, 3 year old child all over again, being trampled by these puppies and getting nibbled on and licked on. So what happens is that when we think of fear, we have to understand that fear actually does not exist, but it exists in the people who believe in it, and it's all in our mind. Our mind can't differentiate what is real and what is not real when
Yeah.
we have it in our subconscious mind. It can't. So would it be fear of the dark or fear of spiders? Someone else will pick up a spider and they'll have it on their hand and they'll be playing with it. It'll be their pet.
Yeah.
So when we look at fear, we are missing a couple of elements, and that is knowledge of the fear, wisdom, and understanding. If we have those three pillars established, we can conquer almost any fear. Here's a quick example. I knew a woman who they went to Virginia Beach, and when they were younger, her brothers and sisters buried her from the neck high all the way down in sand. So now the water was coming, some insects were coming. The water never touched her, the insects never touched her, but they came towards her. And from that point on, she was afraid of sand. It wasn't until 30 years later, her struggling with mental health issues concerning this area. She's seen psychologists and therapists. She was taking 4 medications. Her kidneys and her liver were actually being negatively affected. Her husband introduced me to her, and we met up at a park. You know, those parks that had those tennis courts and those volleyball courts that actually have sand in it. And I handed her a bottle of Pellegrino. And I said, hey, first time meeting you, here you go. Here's some, a bottle of some sparkling water. And we were talking about her fear, and she said, just don't mention sand, because if you do, I'm going to break out into hives. I said, okay. I said, when's the last time you touched it? And she's only, I never touched sand. And that quick, I said, right now you're touching a glass bottle of Pellegrino. You're touching sand right now, because when you heat up sand to 3,000 plus degrees, you get glass. And when she realized that in her mind, she just started to cry, and then she started to laugh almost hysterically. There's a volleyball pit full of sand, and she actually went over to the volleyball pit, jumped in there, and started doing snow angels in the thing of sand. I was dressed up with a shirt on and tie. I jumped in there with her, and I started doing the snow angels. So her birthday recently came up. I bought her a hourglass with the sand in it and the glass and all that for her birthday, and she loves it. She's off her medication. She doesn't see that psychologist and that therapist anymore, who loved the fact that she was on pills. And her husband thanks me almost every month with a nice little card in the mail. So what happened was we just changed her perspective in the way that she saw herself. And then we gave her a better knowledge, wisdom, understanding in reference to her fear. We didn't diminish her fear, but we just told her why she may have it. And then she was able to conquer that monster of fear.
Do you think that the underlying reason why, well, you kind of answer it. You think the underlying reason is why most of us don't like face our dark nights of soul? Is it because we're afraid of what we will find out or what we will discover? Or is it because we don't know that that is the reason for our anxiety, our depression, and so forth?
Wow, that's a really good question. I love the way you preface that. That's really good. A lot of times when we're facing anything in life, the reason why we feel that fear, and I always say the fruit, it stems from the root. It comes from the root cause. And a lot of times that is our childhood. It is the way that we were brought up. And if you look at it, a lot of it is looking at our self-worth, because of the fact that we don't fully know who we are for most people. When you get hit with a stimuli that's negative, a negative stimuli, now you have fear, stress, anxiety, self doubt, trauma, because of the fact that we don't know exactly how powerful we are as people. And because of that, it gives us that area, that small crack where the enemy can slip in and plant those negative thoughts. It's almost like right now, if I was to ask someone to wiggle their toes, I would say, hey, how did you do that? They would tell me, oh, my brain told my spinal cord told my toe, and they would give me that whole big rundown.
Yeah.
And then I said, well, you just said your brain told your spine, told your toe. So if it's your brain, if it's your spine, if it's your nerve endings, if your tendons, it's your toes, then who are you? So if the brain belongs to you, and if the spine and the toes belong to you, then who are you? And a lot of times when we realize, like, you don't want to get up in the morning or go to the gym or go boxing or something, then what happens? You're like, oh, I don't want to go there. All right, get up. You tell yourself to get up. So you're telling your brain now to get up. And that's what I'm saying. We are spiritual beings in a physical body. And it sounds so odd to even say that, but if the brain belongs to you, then that means that it's yours. So when a negative thought comes into your brain, you have the responsibility to challenge that negative thought. So when that X comes up, or you hear that song that reminds you that one time that negative thing happened, or someone reminds you of something, you have to now challenge that negative thought. You have to do it. When you look in the mirror and you say, "Oh my gosh, I'm overweight. I need to do this. I need to do that." That's not you. That's that negative thought that popped into your mind. So now you need to challenge it and say, "Hey, you know what? I'm more than enough. I am worthy." And this is why the power of affirmations is so powerful, because every day you wake up, you're going to be under attack. We are, as people, we are going to be under attack, and every day is a fight. Someone's like, "Rob, do I have to keep on fighting?" Yes, you do.
Mhm.
This is why you got to have a conquer mindset. Where is it? Right there. You have to have a conquer, because every day you're going to be under attack. Something is going to come in to try to throw you off your game. It wants to steal your joy, your peace, your happiness. The enemy's here to kill, steal, and destroy. And if it could do it by simply distracting you and by discouraging you, then it did its job. So whether it be a family member, a friend, these are most of the times where it's going to come from, right? A coworker, family, friend. They're just going to remind you that you're not as good as you think you are, and you have to tell yourself that you are. You have to tell yourself, you know, I'm beautiful, I'm handsome, I'm smart. You have to say this, because who else will?
Yeah.
And I mentioned this before to someone, but what happens is this, we're looking at people in our circle, and in reality, it's not about who's in your circle, it's about who's in your corner. Think of it as boxing. You have a whole bunch of friends. They've seen that you've been training and boxing all day, and I've seen your videos. You look good, by the way. I've seen you punching in there. So you look in your videos. So imagine you get into that ring. You say, you know what, I'm going to test my skills and see what can I do with someone. So you invite your closest friends, your family members, everyone shows up. But what happens when the fight begins? They can't help you. As a matter of fact, they're not going to help you. See, the thing is that they talked really good. They got dressed, but they did that for them. They're going to be nothing but a spectator in the crowd like everyone else. So it's not about who's in your circle. It's about who's in your corner. Who has been coaching you? Who's your cut man, right? Who's your coach? Who's going to say, hey, you need a duck, you need a weave? Who is that? That person right there, in most scenarios, it has to be you. No one else can tell you that you're good enough. No one else can. And I see people, oh, I'm searching for love, or this is a healing journey. No, you better get past that lifetime healing journey and heal yourself right now, because we don't have time to waste. We don't have time to keep on going on some journey. We need to win right now, and we need to win every day in every moment. Every single moment we need to win. And you
Yeah.
need to do it for you, because no one else is going to do it for you.
Absolutely. And I love that. Talking about now, I actually just did a live on Instagram, and I talked about the power of now, living in the moment, living in, because I truly believe, in my opinion, even though I do have my moments of thinking in the future or thinking in the past, right? But my main core, at least my main value, is that I believe that the only moment that truly exists is the now, is the present, right? And because that's the only moment we can make any shift, or we can make any change in our life. And also, I feel like when we talk about the now, right, we oftentimes like dismiss the now, which is where the fruit gets, we can reap the benefits of anything that we want out of this life only in the now, right? It doesn't matter if I don't know, at least that's my perspective from that place, right?
Hey, you better not stop there. You're 100% right. I like what you're saying, because you're absolutely right. Anxiety, it lies where? In the future, right? Self doubt and sadness, that lies in the past. But what are we going to do right now? And this is the major difference between seeking happiness. I always teach people, never seek happiness. And they get a little upset when I say that. Don't go and seek happiness. Why would we do that? Our job is to seek joy.
Mm.
Imagine being on a journey and you're traveling from here to your vacation destination, and you just can't wait till you get there. And that's all you're thinking of. about. So now you're stressed out about what to pack. You're stressed out about is there is the flight going to work out? Is the tickets or is the gas and the fuel? You're stressed about all these things. And when you get there, you take a deep breath and you see these people who sleep on their entire vacation,
Yeah.
right? They sleep on their entire vacation. They work so hard to get there and they want to enjoy all these sights, but they don't have the energy anymore because they're finally happy and it wore them out. Then later on, they're sad because they slept the whole time and they could have just stayed at home and had a staycation. So what happens is if you live in the now, you then will have joy. Joy is getting the tickets. Joy is taking the drive. Joy is packing. Joy is throughout the day with no stress, enjoying the moment and living in the now. Anxiety can't live in the now. Anxiety can't live with joy. It just doesn't work out that way. But it could be there if you're seeking happiness. It's like love. I'm searching for love. I'm going to find the person to complete me. Whoa, that means you're full of anxiety the entire time. You're full of all kind of stress trying to find just the right one. You're going to try to get a guy who's drinking and smoking and cursing. Well, he's a good guy and I think he'll change. No, he won't. See, because you're trying to find that happiness. But if you find the joy in this thing and realizing, hey, you know what? If they come, they come. But I'm going to work on me right now. I'm going to work at a higher vibration and a higher frequency where I'm going to attract this person in my life that I'm supposed to have. So, yeah, I love what you're saying because you're 100% on point with that.
I love that. Thank you. Oh, so beautiful. Talking about joy, finding happiness, really back into the conqueror's mindset here. And in the book, we kind of talk about fight, flight, and freeze. And you talked on
Yeah,
how most people will fight, they'll fly, but one of the emotions that most people do or don't do actually is freeze. Can you elaborate a little bit
exactly.
on
Yes. So what we're saying is that in that freeze, that's where fear resides, in that procrastination, in that hesitation. And a lot of times, whenever we do that, it comes from an area of self-doubt. Or say, for example, I have a couple clients who used to be hoarders. They would freeze in cleaning that one area of the house all the time. You know the people, you go over there and they always try to hide that mess that's in the corner, and the mess is always there, right? The same stack of papers, the same letters are on the dresser, but they're always piling up. The same room is always messy. Oh, don't worry about the back room, it's just messy. And it stays messy. Well, one of the reasons why is because that's where their control lies. See, that's their mess. That's their mess. And that freeze, it allows them to actually be in a comfort zone where they know that this is their mess. This is their, because they don't have control in other areas of their life. They want control of that mess. This is the reason
that?
why a lot of people get caught up in gossip all the time, because that's their thing, because they are struggling in other areas in their life. So we look at people and we say, hey, they're a gossiper, or they're a drinker, a smoker, a this or that, or they're a glutton, they eat too much. That right there is, again, associated with anxiety, and that's just a symptom, but it's not actually the problem. And too many times in the medical field, I've seen a lot of medical professionals, I coach a lot of great psychologists and a lot of therapists, but they are struggling themselves. I have one gentleman, he's on his fourth marriage, and he doesn't mind me saying it, he's on his fourth marriage, but he's a marriage counselor. And one young lady, she's a drug therapist, but she's struggling with drug addiction herself. So what happens is that when you live this false reality in life, and you're not actually, living proof of what it means to not be a hypocrite, people can tell. People can tell. It's almost like when you're in a crowd and there's hundreds of people there, but you turn around and you can feel that one person just staring at you. You ever had the feeling where you're like, hey, someone's staring, and that one person, I'm telling you, as people, we have extraordinary gifts. We can actually feel that energy. You're sitting in a room and someone knocks on the door and they open the door and you're like ready to fight. You're like, hey, and then you look and it's someone that you don't know and that you don't like. But then all of a sudden, someone else does the same thing and you just have a big smile on your face and you're so welcoming because you feel that energy. That right there is what we feel. And in that energy, the truth always lies. So this is the reason why a lot of us are struggling in so many areas in our life, because we haven't been willing to, as I say, stop clipping the tips of the leaves and the weeds. We need to actually dig down into the root of that weed. And in order to do that, and if you follow this garden analogy, we need to get dirty.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like we mentioned in the book, certain parts get a little kind of dirty. That's what happens. We have to be willing to get dirty in that dirt and extract that weed out once and for all from the root and cast it in the fire.
Yeah, and what is it like? What does it mean to have that type of mentality?
Thank you. Oh, I love your question. See, this is why you do what you do. You are so incredible. And this is why I watch your stuff here. I'm telling you. So, what it means to fight like a conqueror and to have a conqueror mindset is to know that you've already won.
Mm.
You know the difference between two boxers when they both get in the ring and one of them is pacing, looking around, and looks a little nervous, looks into the crowd. Whoever's looking to the crowd, they're in trouble already. Okay, it's just a fight world.
Yeah.
If someone's looking in the crowd at the audience, they lost the boxing match already. But the one who walks in with that smooth confidence, who knows who they are and whose they are, that's the one who has the conqueror mindset. The one who knows that I've already won this battle, but I just know I'm going to do the very best I can, and I'll leave all the results up to God. I know that I'm going to do the best I can, and the outcome's going to be exactly what's supposed to be because I've trained hard. I put in the work in myself, and I know just how bad I am. I know who I am. See, the enemy, he attacks people who don't know who they are. Those are the people who end up finding themselves on the short end of the stick constantly all the time, pushing hard and they never make it. 40 years in the wilderness, wondering why they still didn't make it to the promised land because they're trying to do it in their own strength. See, when you have humility and just enough confidence, this is what helps you understand, wow, I am more than enough. I am. And then you work on your craft. We never get arrogant where we think we know it all. No, we keep on striving for knowledge over and over again. So whether it come with, say, the self-healing journey, we have to be healed, because if we continue on that journey, then we haven't made it yet. It's almost like a wound. If we continue just kind of licking that wound and we haven't allowed it to heal, sometimes you got to rip the Band-Aid off and let that scab up a little bit. I know we don't want a scar, but if people keep on putting ointment on it over and over again and it stays too moist, sometimes it's okay to have those scars and realize that this scar represents to me a battle that I've already won.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? It's almost like the story of David and Goliath. David didn't just go rush towards Goliath and think it. No, he had to first go through a battle with a lion and a bear, so that he used those past circumstances to empower him to move forward and to know that he can win. So that's really important in our life for us to look back at the times in our life when we faced adversity and where we won, where we made it through. And that should help us slingshot into the future, knowing that we can actually win this thing with confidence, knowing that we've already won. It allows you to actually, just like boxing, you're not tense anymore. You're loose. You're smooth. You're not telegraphing your punches. But when you don't think you're going to win, when you're nervous about the outcome, when you're seeking happiness instead of living in joy, you're going to be tense in this battle. You're going to be so tense that you're going to telegraph every punch, and the opposition already knows that they beat you already before the fight began.
I love that.
I know that you box, so it's just I've been in 3 to 4 fights every day my entire life growing up. So you got to think about it. So literally thousands of fights, thousands. And then I chased after the world's worst criminals, and I had to fight them. So I just want you to think about it. So now, by fighting the monster from within, I know his tactics. I know his strategy now.
Yes. One of the things you mentioned when you were talking about, becoming or having a conqueror's mindset is you talked about putting in the work, practicing,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And that's how confidence is built as well. So
Yes.
I guess, like, for anyone else that is looking to go down that path, right? What kind of work can they put into themselves right now to build up to that mindset?
Yes, and that's a great question, by the way. I'm telling you, I can't wait till you have your own show somewhere, because you were so good. But yeah, you're absolutely right what you're saying. So what we first have to do is, I always say, write down a piece of paper, write down what it is that you like about yourself. And then be honest with yourself in truth, and write down what it is that you don't like about yourself and what it is that you want to change. Once you do that, you can start working on the change. I know for me, I looked at discipline as being one of the key factors in winning in life. So I wanted to practice what I preach. For 10 years, I did 2,000 push-ups every other day for 10 years because I wanted to see if I had the discipline to do it. 1 year, I had no ice cream. I wanted to challenge myself and say, can I go 1 year without any ice cream? That was a rough one. 1 year without cookies, 1 year without chips. And for some reason, chips was probably the worst battle, right? I want to say, can I go 16 years without fast food? Can I go 20 years without a soda? I just want to say, if something isn't helpful to me, why do I keep on introducing this to my body? If this is not going to be healthy, but I like the taste. That means I have no discipline. So if you can't tame yourself physically, then how do you expect to be, say, a faithful husband, a faithful wife, a faithful spouse? If that physical temptation of food you can't control, how can you control being a committed relationship? So as a husband and father, for me, this was great because I did this work before I even got married. So what I'm saying to us is that we need to first have the discipline, because if we can't discipline what comes into our body, this means that we can't discipline what comes into our mind. Okay. Just
Yeah.
like toxicity coming into our body, we can have toxicity coming into our mind, and it'll affect our overall health. So if I constantly watch news and say I'm concerned about different parts of the world and they're very important to me, the same issue, but I consistently overwhelm myself with watching it over and over and over again, I'm going to develop anger
Yeah.
and sadness and even hatred. And then I got to put on a happy face before I go see someone. And now it's fake. You see the people, oh, hi, my name's hi. That's fake. And everyone can read that. And we know those people who do that all the time. You say, hi. And then you look at them as they walk away and they have the most angry face and they see, hi. That's a problem. Okay. And most of the time they're on medication. We know the people like that. And it's not good because you're not being honest with yourself
Mhm.
about how you actually feel. But when you recognize that, you know what, my eyes are a window to the soul. I got to be careful what I see, what I hear. And that right there will help you on being careful what you say. You see people having this Freudian slip all the time, and it happens, but a lot of times it's because of the things that we've introduced ourselves to constantly. If you take on toxicity as far as food, your body's going to show it. If you take on toxicity in your mind,
Mhm.
then your body, mind, spirit is going to show it. So we just have to be really disciplined in this area and have a conqueror mindset throughout.
Absolutely. I was laughing very hard right now because you said talking you said something about, when you focus so much on like the news and because
Yes.
I literally lived that. I was one of those people that I was so passionate about Africa, or I'm still very passionate about Africa, but I have a
Yes.
different way of looking at it now. But
Same thing.
when I started this journey, I was so passionate about Africa when I learned about the inhumane things that a lot of people in Africa are going through, the colonization. When I learned about those things, I was so upset. I was upset at the leaders. I was upset at the Western world, anybody that is taking advantage of any African country, right?
Yes.
And it took a tour on me. You know,
Yes.
and I found myself sad, depressed. So that's why when you said that, I was like, oh, yeah, I know exactly what he's talking about. But now it's the
Yeah.
mentality and the mind shift that I have about it that isn't making me so sad about it. Moreover, it's making me like, what are some solutions that I can bring to support some people or a handful of people instead of being upset about it because that didn't really help much.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I like what you're saying too. And the thing is that so many times we're taught on this, as we saw a healing journey, right? But on this conqueror mindset, what we're taught on this journey is to, oh, well, don't be upset about that. Just shift your mind and now change your mind. That right there, that's living in a fake world.
yeah,
We need to be upset about things like that. We need to be sad about things like that, and then we need to take action. See, a
yeah,
lot of times we stay in this bubble, we stay in this mindset because we're not doing anything about it. But when we do our part, when we say bring recognition to things or we talk about things, it's like the monster. The monster doesn't like it when you expose them. You see
mm,
what I'm saying? So by defeating the monster, he's used to conventional ways of warfare, but the exposure of that leads to what I talked about before: knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of that negative stimuli. That allows us to conquer it. See, let's just say if we have an area that we're from and that area is bombarded by a whole bunch of corruption and evil and just violence. Well, instead of just harping about it to ourselves, we then expose it in a manner in which people could say, wow. And that is your way of defeating the monster, because the monster is used to every other type of warfare. As I explained in the book, he's used to all conventional styles, but his whole job is to get you. He
yeah,
wants to get you here. That's his whole job. So now you're in the car, God forbid, and we get into a car wreck because we were just so angry and we weren't focused. And then that's when someone bumps into us in the store, and we're like, because we're so filled up with this. And a lot of times we turn to, I call it coping mechanisms,
mhm,
stress. So we go to drugs, alcohol, pornography, and what happens is that right there is a coping mechanism, or exercise, for example. A lot of people they become an Olympic runner or they're a weightlifter because this is the way that they can get their stress out when they don't understand that those are coping mechanisms. Those are not conquering mechanisms. It's okay to have a stress release, but not to have a coping mechanism, which modern psychology and therapists, they teach us to have coping mechanisms. That's not healthy. That leads us to being put on medication because that stress causes disease and illness, and it causes our mental health to decline. So in order to do that, we have to what? Face the monster head on. We have to speak truth to power, right? We got to speak it. We got to bring that monster from the darkness into the light.
mhm,
And half the time, that monster is something that we're struggling with ourselves.
yeah,
This other thing that we think that's bothering us, it just reminds us of something that happened to us when we were younger. It reminds us of something that we haven't conquered yet. And because of that, we take it to a level that it shouldn't go to. So when someone says, hey, don't take this personal, no, you should take things personal. See, that's the thing. Everything that we've been programmed to think and how it all leads to coping mechanisms. We need to have conquering mechanisms by being bold within ourselves and saying how we actually feel, but doing it in a respectful manner, especially if we're in a public or even a private setting.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you're talking, I wanted to touch on something there very powerful. You talked in the book, you talked about uh knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. I think a lot of time, especially in our society today, we confuse knowledge and wisdom, right? Because I think, in my opinion, I think those are two different things. And then you
Yes.
talked about understanding. Can you give us a little bit of snippet of what your perspective on those two things are, knowledge and wisdom, and then why understanding as well is important?
Yes, yes, and again, I love the way that you preface that, and wow, you really broke the book down in that manner because let's just say, for example, I seen a person who was acting erratically. Their house was very neat, but they were acting erratically every time someone came over, and people who were visiting their home were actually laughing at them and making fun of them. And I asked them, "You're in their home, but you're secretly talking behind their back about them. Why is that?" I said, "Look at them. They're a neat freak. They have ADHD. They have this. They have that, and they're telling me all these things about this person." And I said, "Do you understand that this person just went through a divorce? Do you understand that their spouse said that they were sloppy and that they weren't neat? Do you understand that this person's dad used to say something? Do you understand the history of this individual?" And I said, "I'm not going to tell you all their business, but you got to be careful who you laugh at, and you're in their home."
Yeah.
And what happens is that a lot of times we get into a habit of disrespecting other people because of the way that we actually feel about ourselves. The person that I spoke to immediately started crying and they said, "I go through that same thing. I'm actually just like them, but I recognize it in them. I want to just taunt them. I want to make them feel bad because it hurts me." And, a lot of people just wouldn't understand that. So they had to have the knowledge of, seeing what the whole entire situation is actually about. Then they had to have the wisdom to not look from without, to actually look within. It's almost like pointing your finger. If I point my finger at someone, yeah, that one finger is pointing forward, but I have three fingers pointing back at me. So when I say, "Hey, I don't like that person, they did this," well, actually, it's three times as worth within myself. So this is why we need to work on ourselves. And a lot of times, this doesn't come from simply exercising or reading a good book. This takes serious, interceding, almost like it takes a serious self-reflection. We call that RSA, rational self-assessment. We need to actually look within ourselves and say, "Why am I thinking the way I'm thinking? And is this fair to this other person?" This is where understanding comes in. We are lacking empathy, we're lacking sympathy, we're lacking understanding. And because of that, a lot of people do a lot of cruel things to other people because they actually are cruel to themselves. And yeah, so I think it's really important to have the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding when interacting in any situation. So the one thing to ask ourselves is what? Will this help me or will this hurt me? That's it. Will this help them or will this hurt them? So if I'm laughing at them, taunting them, does that help them? No. Does it help me? No. See, the reason why they think it helps them is because the inside they're a bully. And they're a bully because they have insecurity. And they have insecurity because they don't know who they are. And
Yeah.
this is what happens with every bully. Every political figure who stands on with power and he wants to do this and that with the people, but he doesn't have the same discipline within himself. This makes him a hypocrite. I remember one time I visited a church and the pastor, really nice guy, but he was a pretty large guy, maybe closer to 400 pounds. And he was just badgering the church about discipline and how they need to have self-discipline. And then after he said, "All right, well, we're going to go to a restaurant. We're going to go eat some food. So let's go and let's go enjoy ourselves this Sunday." And I pulled him off to the side and I said, "You talk to them about discipline, and barring you having a hormonal condition," I said, "you're not demonstrating that even with your physical appearance, let alone with your own words." And I said, and then now you're trying to entrap them by eating some greasy chicken and some other food from a restaurant that's not healthy for them. So now, it's almost like a pig. When a pig sees an eagle, even though it's really hard for them to do that because pigs, when they look up, they actually can't look up and see the sky because the way they're built. But let's just say from a distance, if a pig sees an eagle, he's going to be very jealous of the eagle because he wants the eagle to come down and stoop down to his level. These certain people, they want you to stoop down to their level and wallow in the mud. So when you express how you feel about Africa or about any other area in the world, they might have an opposing view, not because they actually disagree with you, but because they want to just see you in that frame of mind. They want to see if they can get something out of you. And that is called a reaction. The monster in our life, whether it be stress, fear, anxiety, childhood trauma, it wants you to react. It wants you to react. Our job is for us to recognize that, to slow things down, take a deep breath, and to respond. There's a big difference between reacting and responding. And a lot of times we just simply act. Someone sends an instant message and we quickly respond it. Someone says it, and then we regret it. We regret it, And there's an old saying, say it, forget it, write it, regret it. So I want us to actually take our time when we interact with other people. And most of all, we need to take time when we interact with ourselves. There's an old Bible verse that says that we have to be quick to listen and slow to speak. Well, in reality, I know we think that that's always about other people. We need to do that with ourselves. We need to be quick to listen to ourselves and say, hey, this is how I actually feel. And then we have to be slow to speak to ourselves. We can't say, you idiot, you dummy, you're fat, you're this, you're out of shape, you're that. What you're doing is that we're speaking to the trillions of cells within our body, the trillions of living organisms in our body. We're speaking to them, and now we're putting negativity on ourselves. And life and death is truly in the power of the tongue.
I 100% agree. And I also want to just add that, when we, like, I think you said this as well, but I would like to also add myself, like,
Yes.
what we can only see, like in other people, right? We can only see what is within ourselves for the most part, a lot of the time, right? When we see someone doing something, that's because that's what we see within us. So, just to add what you said, and man, anyways, I cannot even try to even add on to that because it was so beautifully said.
Oh, wow, you're incredible. You're incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you. You're so sweet. No, but what you said is 100% right.
Yeah.
And just that little bit that you added on, that is so crucial because you're 100% right. I know people who are, I counsel them, and they're members of different hate groups. And they say, hey, I hate this person who's like this because they're different than me. Or I hate this person. And I'm like, so what is it that you hate? And when we get into it, come to find out, they're actually similar, or something happened to them in their life where they actually agree with them, but they hate that part about themselves.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. It's incredible. So what you said has a lot of meat on that bone there.
I love some meat.
That's right. That's right.
Before we come closer, and I think I have maybe 2 to 3 more questions for you. When it comes down to your faith, because I've had several conversations with you, and I read that part of you as a man of faith. When it comes down to your faith, how important is it for you, not only you, but for us to be able to align ourselves with the divine, right? I don't know if people call it God, or, Yahweh, wherever they call it, right? But that greater energy that is out there for us.
Yes. Well, I love the way that you said that as well, too. What a great question. And it's bold, too, because a lot of people don't ask questions like that. This is why I love what you do. Yes. And on the issue of faith, there's a big difference between saying a person who's a religious person and a person who's spiritual. See, a lot of times the religious people, like say, for example, in the Bible, the religious people actually killed Jesus, right? It's kind of funny. But what happens is that a lot of times religious people, they read a certain text, whether it be from any religion, right? Let's just say the Bible, for example. There's 44,000 denominations off of just the Bible. Yeah. 44,000, and then some of them call themselves Christianity, and there are 44,000 different versions. So you look at different faiths. The reason why I say in my book, I write down our creator is because, the only reason why people have the religion that they have is because in most cases they were brought up in that religion. So if I was to take someone from, say, India, and then I take someone else, say, from Nebraska, or I take someone who is from Africa or someone who's from Australia, it may differ depending on what they grew up listening to, what they grew up watching. So for me, I realized that instead of me being a religious person, I had to be a spiritual person. This allows me now to speak to an atheist on the phone, to speak to a Christian, to speak to a Muslim, to speak to a Hindu, to speak to different people from around the world, and no one catches offense. I asked them, hey, is what I said offended to you? And they said, no, because people can feel your love. And that's the difference. When you walk in love, it surpasses all. A lot of people don't understand that, instead of me giving, I like to give a lot of things to people and be a blessing to people because I think that's what we should do. Instead of me looking back and say, hey, I just bought this person this, or I just bought this person that, they didn't say thank you. And then I start pouting. No, what happens is this. A lot of people, they're seeking love and acceptance. So they give things because they're expecting something in return. But when your love is overflowing, that residual that comes off, you can freely give that to someone else with no strings attached. This is love without conditions. And there's very rare people who have this ability that don't know themselves. But the people who have it, those are people who are, as they say, comfortable in your own skin. You know who you are, you know whose you are, so it allows you to be a blessing. It's almost like when a person doesn't like you, instead of you not liking them back, or you ever have it where there's a coworker or a friend or family member who walks by you, and your natural motion is to say hello back or to say hi, but you notice there's someone that doesn't like you, so and you kind of catch yourself because you're about to say hi, but you didn't say hi because you know they don't like you. What happens is that means that they have power over you, and that means that they won. If you're a genuinely happy person who wants to say hi, and a person walks by who doesn't like you, still say hi anyway, because this is who you are. And over time, we all know it's like reaping hot coals on top of their head, because once they change who you are, this means that they have control. So that whole let your cup runneth over, it is so true. And it allows you to speak to people from different walks of life, different so-called religions, or different, spiritual, just things that the people grew up with. For example, I had one house divided. Someone is a Muslim, someone's a Christian, and then one of the children, they became an atheist, right? Why are we bickering at one another based upon our belief when in reality, we are spiritual beings having a physical experience, right? Right, living in a physical body,
Wow.
and we all have an expiration date. Sooner or later, that time is going to hit, and it's going to be our time. And we look back at these conversations where we wasted our time talking about politics, right? Democrat, Republican, who's going to do it? We waste our time talking about someone else's religion. Oh, this person believes in that. When in reality, you were just born into that. It doesn't make you who you are as a person. And that's where the trouble lies, when we want to have these conversations based upon something that we don't even know ourselves. So just to kind of piggyback back to it, once we understand who we are, then we understand whose we are. And if we can respect other people's beliefs, we would go a lot further in this world as a whole.
Absolutely. Being a father, when it comes down to being a father and, being a man, also a black man in America, um, how important or how valuable is it for, black men, to be precise here, to be able to value family?
Yeah, it's really important, and I like the way you said that too, in reference to that, because you know, being a man, period, black, white, whatever, but being a man, it's very important to not fit within any stereotype. Okay,
Mm,
for me personally, I don't judge anyone who does it, but I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't use profanity, I don't do drugs. For me, I just don't do those things. Um, I don't say, "Hey, what's up? What's happening? Yo, what's up?" I don't talk like that, because a lot of people who look like me don't talk like that where I'm from. So when I have people say, "Oh, you talk different, or you sound different," different from what? From television? Because we don't fit within any type of stereotype. So for me, being a king, I personally need a queen. For me, I need a queen, and I'm going to treat her as such. So I'm not going to grab her if she made me upset. I'm not going to be abusive. I'm not going to cheat. I'm not going to yell at her in her face. I'm not going to be condescending. I'm not going to be a bully. I'm not going to give her emotional distress, physical violence, emotional violence. None of that's going to happen. So you have to set the standard. And as you said, being a father, I now need to demonstrate to my son what it means to be a man. And he needs to understand that real men do cook, they clean, they do dishes, they do laundry, they do these things, as far as real men, because there's no gender role when it comes to helping out the overall household itself. You know, a lot of times in relationships, and I counsel a lot of couples, and I never do husband and wife couples at the same time, because someone else is always trying to do posturing, right? They do a lot of posturing and a lot of showing off. So I counsel them individually, and I noticed that people whine about a woman's time of the month and how women are very erratic. I hear it all the time. Oh, you know how women are. And then I found out that the women, in many cases, are more stable than the men, because the men are struggling with their own ego,
mm,
whether it be white, black, Puerto Rican, Dominican, whatever that is, whatever ethnicity it is. They're struggling with who they are as a man. And a lot of times, some of these men carry on these feminine traits because either a man wasn't in the house, or they don't understand what it really means to be a man. See, it's almost like a skyscraper. A skyscraper in the wind can sway back and forth. Okay, that right there to me is a woman. She's going to have a good day, a bad day. She's going to have this, but the man, he has to be the base of that skyscraper. He has to be that foundation. He has to be steady as a rock. Okay, he has to be there to comfort her, to guide her. And that woman, she then needs to be a helpmate. See, men, they're not seeking love, actually. Men, from my experience, they're seeking just respect.
mm.
Women need love and affection and things of that nature. Men, to them, respect is love. So when a woman acts respectful, a man loves her. And like, let's just say, for example, I was coaching this one woman recently, actually a couple days ago. She said, my husband will never cut the grass. I just hate it that he doesn't cut the grass at all. I told her, I said, well, when was the last time he cut the grass? She said, it was about a month ago. I said, wow, okay. How about you go up to him tomorrow, tell him, hey, hon, when you cut the grass the last time, you did such an amazing job. I just love the way you did it. Just to see your arms bulging when you were just holding onto that lawnmower, it was just like, oh, it was amazing. And then just slap him on his backside. That's what I said. She did that. She told me that he was cutting the grass at 3 a.m. in the dark. He had the lights on and he was cutting. He had an electric mower, so it was really silent. It didn't disturb the neighbors. Well, she said that he was up at 3 a.m. cutting the grass. And so she's like, Rob, how did you do that? Here's what it is. Men are seeking respect. If a woman gives a man respect, he would give her the entire world if it's a real man. So that's just my long story about that.
I love that. And how does a conqueror's mindset fit into that, build into that?
Yes, a conqueror mindset, especially in relationships, is doing the little things consistently. It's not doing them once in a while. It's not love with conditions. It's doing the small things consistently, but doing it all the time. And don't do it for, as again, we talk about love conditions, to get that approval. Don't do it to hear, oh, hon, I did the dishes. You didn't say I didn't do the dishes. No, it's doing it to have joy in the moment. Again, we talk about joy and happiness. It's doing it for yourself and doing it for the family, or doing it for yourself and then doing it for others. So it's not about, oh, I did this to please someone. That right there, that's a bad life. When you're doing something to be a people pleaser. I've seen people different times at different jobs. A supervisor will tell a joke. Number one, it's not funny. Number two, they didn't hear it. And they're all laughing at the joke. It's not funny. Why are you laughing? Well, because of their own insecurity and in their quest to be a people pleaser, they find themselves laughing. And that's the difference between us living life like a sheep and living life and being a lion. Okay? It's okay for us to step outside of that line. I know society has taught us, hey, if you draw outside the lines, you're going to be punished. That's what happened. That's what happened all the time. For a quick example, I can read. When I was younger, my mother and my dad, they taught me how to read when I was 2 years old. So I was 2, 3 years old and I was reading at 2 or 3. I took the family television apart, you know, those big box TVs in the 80s. I took it apart with a butter knife and I took the entire television apart. It was in pieces everywhere in the house. My parents came in and instead of, just spanking me for it, they said, hey, put the TV back together. They told me they were so shocked. They said they hid around the corner and they watched as with a butter knife, I screwed everything back and put the television back together. So when I went to school and I can read and do math and all those things, the school told me that I was stupid. They put me in special classes in the remedial. They said that I had all these different mental issues and things going on. And they put me in. And for about 10 minutes, I started to believe them. I said, wow, I do need to go into the special class. Maybe I can't read. And this is how the enemy works. The enemy tries its very best to tear away at your confidence. It tries its very best to distract you and then to discourage you because his whole goal is to steal, kill, and destroy. This is who they are. So when they see someone like you, and especially for you, I've seen your videos, someone like you, instead of being happy for someone like you and some other people, they would be threatened. So now they need to label you as being angry. Now they need to label you as being, because they need some type of a stereotype. They need something to make themselves feel better and to put you down and to put you into a box. This is why people say, oh, Rob, I need to start thinking outside the box. I'm like, where'd you hear that from? There is no box to think outside of. Why do we need to think outside of a box? It's almost like the whole, oh, it makes sense. Does that make sense? I didn't hear that until 2019. Before that, I never heard a person say it. Now people say it all the time. If you have to ask me, does that make sense? Obviously it doesn't. So you shouldn't have to ask me, Another thing with the whole, I hear you, I see you. Don't tell someone. These are condescending remarks that people who are not listening to you say. Anytime you hear a person say that, they're not listening to you. And it's good for us to pause and in most cases just to walk away because we're wasting our energy. So just to go back to what you were saying, being a husband, being a father, it starts here. We can't just try to run into a relationship believing that we'll be good at it or be complete. We have to be so complete ourselves that now we can actually freely give to someone else wholeheartedly, and it's not a show. This is why you see relationships that don't last for very long because it's a show. There's a lot of posturing. You see the pictures on TikTok and Instagram of different couples, and they're all putting on a show when in reality, they actually really don't love each other. They like each other, but it's more of a business relationship. They don't have that full bond, and those relationships only last for so long.
Yeah.
I just came up on my 16th 16th wedding anniversary just a little while ago, just a couple weeks ago, and
Congrats.
I reflected back. Thank you, thank you. Look, I'm smiling now just thinking about her. My cutie pie. So just thinking about her, I'm like, this is my very best friend. This is my best friend. I would do anything for her, and I have done anything for her. And I know that she would do the same for me. So for someone to actually cheat on someone, or for someone to put their hands on someone, I don't have any respect for individuals who do that. Even though I coach them, I say I don't respect what you did, but we're going to work on this thing and find out the reason why. And in many cases, it comes down to the same thing: their own self worth, because they don't feel valued in who they are. And because they don't know who they are, they do things that are very destructive.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for joining me on the first part of this conversation with Robert. I hope that this, first part of this conversation brought you some type of value, right? I hope that you enjoyed this conversation. Please come back next week. We are going to be talking to Robert again, and we're going to continue this beautiful conversation that we have going on here with him. So, please, ladies and gentlemen, come right back because you don't want to miss the second part of this conversation. It will leave you feeling amazing. It will leave you feeling empowered. It will leave you feeling as if you can conquer the world. Because the goal for this conversation is for you to start facing your dark night of soul, which is something that I feel like I got from this podcast. Robert's words are so empowering, they're so uplifting, motivating all at once. So please come back next week. Also, in this moment, I want to remind you to please go ahead and hit that subscription button if you haven't done so already. Follow us on our social media. You can connect with me at Lira, Lira underscore Ndifon. Again, that is Lira, Lira underscore Ndifon. I hope that you guys have a blessed day. Take care of yourself, love yourself, be kind, and be gentle with yourself. Until next time, bye for now. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this second part of this conversation with Robert. I truly appreciate you guys for joining me back to finish Conqueror's mindset with Robert. This is going to be another conversation that is going to leave you at the edge of your seat. It's going to empower you. It's going to motivate you. It's going to uplift you. It's going to leave you feeling great with yourself. So let's go, guys. Let's turn into the part two of this conversation. Hey guys, this is your girl Liram, and you're listening to Self Reflection Podcast. Thank you guys so much for coming right back to this conversation with Robert. I hope that you guys are doing well today. And if you're not doing your best, please go ahead and create some time to do some self reflection. Also, if you cannot handle the emotions that you're feeling on your own, please go ahead and seek some support in this moment. Not all the time we can handle our emotions. Sometimes we need help, and that's just what it is. Sometimes we need somebody else in our corner. So, if you are looking for support in this moment, go out and get that support. Let's get into our conversation with Robert. Thank you again so much, Robert, for joining me on Self Reflection Podcast. I really appreciate you. I appreciate your time. I have enjoyed this conversation. I think the entire time I was smiling, just like, oh my God, how beautiful this is. So I do hope that your words is going to find someone out there that needed it just as much as I did. Again, thank you so much.